What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Rhythm and Peace podcast. As always, I'm your host, Greg Lacey. Now, people are out there saying that Kendrick Lamar is milking this back and forth with Drake. I can only imagine what y'all are saying about me. But nevertheless, we are here. I feel like I kind of hinted at this video. Well, I know I announced the video in a previous episode, but I've kind of been hitting towards wanting to do this video just through some of the song breakdowns that I have been breaking down through this back and forth between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. But lo and behold, we are here. We have the Drake mistakes video, the mistakes that Drake made in between this back and forth with him and Kendrick Lamar. The reason why I say mistakes is because despite, I'm a fan of both artists. Obviously, I'm a bigger fan of Kendrick Lamar. I feel like I've stated that already. But despite that, going into this back and forth, I don't want to say a battle. Going into this back and forth, I feel like this was definitely Drake's battle to lose. Clearly, he lost, but he shouldn't have lost it. In today's day and age, in 2024, in the court of public opinion seems to sway towards the side of the most popular opponent in any battle, whether it's a court battle, whether it's a rap battle, whether it's basketball, where the case may be. Whoever has the biggest fan base, whoever is able to activate that fan base, majority of the times are the people who are going to come out the victor no matter what, because of just how massive a fan base and how big those voices can be. Case in point, since we're speaking about Drake, think about Drake and Pusha T. Pusha T clearly won that back and forth. However, Pusha T is not that big of an artist that Drake is. And so in the court of public opinion, outside of people who actually care about music, actually care about rap and things like that, people will tell you that Drake beat Pusha T, which, again, music is subjective, but I think if you speak to people, music heads, hip-hop heads, people that actually care about the lyrics and the bars and things like that, they will sway more towards Pusha T's side. Not to get off track, but the reason why I was saying that, this was Drake's to lose is because Drake is one of the biggest artists we have seen in the past 20 years, probably will go down as one of the biggest artists we have ever seen, just in terms of his commercial success, just in terms of his musical output, just in terms of just his influence over, the people who have come behind him and different things like that. Drake is massive, false. And in a sense, he's almost as big as Michael Jackson, someone who he likens himself to.
Bro, I'm one away from Michael, nigga, beat it.
Michael Jackson was huge, came up R&B star, transitioned when he went solo to a pop star, and his stardom just began to rise, and to the point to where it was just immeasurable. And I think that has been Drake's trajectory as well. I think that when Drake first came out, he was this rapping and singing kid under Lil Wayne, who at the time when he got signed, Lil Wayne was the hottest rapper. And so you kind of look at Drake as a protege of the hottest rapper. Obviously, he has to be successful. And I think what Drake has, accomplished in that time under the tutelage of Lil Wayne and Young Money, I think that was also immeasurable. I don't think that people expected him to blow up in the sense that he did. In a sense, we can say that Drake is a bigger name than Lil Wayne, which is crazy to think because Lil Wayne in itself is also a big name. And so when you have someone with that stardom, have someone with that fan base, no matter what goes on, they're going back and forth, you will have a larger fan base on your side. So when you're able to activate those voices, activate those comments on social media, activate those tweets and different things like that, you can sway the public opinion because you have so many people on your side saying that, no, this is the story of this battle. This is what's happening. This is what happened. This is who's up. This is who's losing, and so on and so forth. And so when I say this is Drake's battle to lose, this definitely should have been something he should have came out the victor. However, I was speaking about this in hindsight. We know how this turned out. Kendrick Lamar came out the victor. Kendrick Lamar totally eviscerated Drake. And so the reason for this video is I want to take a look at some of the mistakes that Drake made. And I want to show you all some of the mistakes that I know that he made, that he could have avoided, that he could have went a different route, and different things like that, because this should have been Drake's battle. He should have won. And so, as we're getting into things, I'm going to give you all my list of what I thought that he did wrong. If you have anything, please do leave that in a comment while you are at it. If you're not subscribed to this channel, please make sure you are subscribing to this channel so that you are alerted when new videos are coming up and announcements happens and things like that. That is greatly appreciated. Before I do get into the mistakes, we had to look at the landscape of how we even got here, because if you have been following both artists for a while, and I'm not going to give you all the long story, I'm going to give you all the condensed story, so there are going to be certain things that are left out. If you have been following both artists for a while, you know that they have had a mutual respect and relationship, especially starting out. You know, Drake got signed to Young Money, I believe, 2009, 2010. Not Little Way. Kendrick Lamar, he's been on Top Dog, but Top Dog had that juncture, that joint partnership with Aftermath. I believe that happened 2012. So Drake got on about 3 years before Kendrick Lamar. On Drake's sophomore album, he had a song in which he featured Kendrick Lamar, which was Buried Alive. Then they went on tour together. Drake was touring for that album, which that song was featured on. Kendrick Lamar was one of the opening acts for Drake. Kendrick Lamar then came back 2 or 3 years later with his debut album, and he had the song Poetic Justice on there, which featured Drake. So obviously there was a mutual respect between the two artists. And then Control dropped. And ironically, nothing was the same. So if y'all don't remember, the song Control by Big Sean featured Kendrick Lamar and Jay Electronica. This had one of probably Kendrick's most talked about verses up until today, just because of what he featured in that verse, which was him being competitive, him looking at rap as a sport and calling out his peers, saying that, you know, no matter... Actually, I'm going to just let the song speak for itself.
T, Meek Mills, A$AP Rocky, Drake, Big Sean, Jay Electron, Tyler McMillan. I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder you niggas.
So Kendrick was calling out his peers and essentially said that, like, you know, I love y'all, but this is a competition. And in order for me to be the best, I got to go at y'all. And the response to that song was, it was a lot of outpour. A lot of rappers who wasn't even mentioned, you know, respond to Kendrick Lamar. They had a problem with him calling himself the King of New York. A lot of rappers had a problem with Kendrick Lamar saying their name. Some people didn't care, and some people took it personal. And Drake was one of those artists who took it personal. And so that brings me to one of the first mistakes that Drake made. The first mistake that Drake made in this battle, actually I'm going to get into that in a little while, but that brings me to one of the first mistakes that Drake made in this battle, which was taking that verse personal and then belittling Kendrick Lamar. So you have Kendrick Lamar release Control. Drake does a couple of interviews where he's like kind of like talking down upon Kendrick Lamar. In that time, the BET Awards and the hip hop ciphers is happening, and Kendrick Lamar sends a shot at Drake.
Yeah, and nothing been the same since they dropped Control and tucked the sensitive rapper back in his pajama clothes.
That Control, the interviews, the BET cipher, then gave us a spiral of about, because this happened, I want to say 2013. So this gave us a spiral of 11 years of the two artists going back and forth with subliminals. And I guess 11 years was long enough for Kendrick to say, all right, I'm going to start putting names on my bullet because I'm tired of doing this. We've been doing this for over a decade. Now let's jump out there. So fast forward to the 2013, Drake releases First Person Shooter. I mean, he releases, what is that? For All the Dogs, the album For All the Dogs, which features the song First Person Shooter. Now, the rumor is this song was a song that was meant to be Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar. However, Kendrick Lamar turned down being a featured guest on that song, which is why in the song Euphoria, he mentions that I'm surprised you wanted that feature request. So the rumor is that it was supposed to be the three of them on there. That never happens. It never comes to fruition. And then it just features Drake and J. Cole. Drake sends a subliminal at Kendrick on that song, and Kendrick steps out there and he gives us like that. So going back into what I was saying about the first mistake that Drake made is that Drake never looked at Kendrick Lamar as a worthy opponent stepping into this battle, even dating back to 10 years. He had a interview with Elliott Wilson to where he kind of like said that he kind of like hinted, and I'm paraphrasing, but he kind of like said that essentially the verse wasn't memorable, said that essentially Kendrick was doing it for attention and that Kendrick wasn't really standing on what he was saying in that verse. And I'm going to play that interview for you all right now.
He's giving people like moments, you know, like that verse was a moment to talk about. Are you listening to it now at this point in time? Okay. And then, but it was real cool for like, you know, a couple weeks. But like, if I ask you, for example, like, how does that verse start?
No, if you remember.
No, and like,
No.
now mind you, it'll go on in Complex and Rap Radar, give it like verse of the millennium and all that shit or whatever. But like, I'm just saying, it's like, you know, I remember like somebody like asking me, you know, or maybe it was you that was like, is Kendrick Lamar your biggest competition like in this generation or whatever? Yeah. And I think that Kendrick has like the utmost potential, man. Like, you know, I see Kendrick tomorrow, I'm gonna dap him. I didn't feel a way about that verse. I get it. I get the moment. Like, you know, he's a good guy. And like, I know that verse had no malice behind it because I saw him 5 days later at the VMAs and it was all love. So it's like, he didn't come on there on some wild, like, yeah, I'm in New York, fuck everybody, don't look at me. Like,
I'm the king.
So it was, you know, it was one of those things. It's like, I almost wish he had come in there on that shit because I kind of lost like a little respect for the sentiment of the verse. If it's really fuck everybody, then it needs to be fuck everybody. It just can't be halfway for the sake of the people. But you know what I'm saying? Like, for real, that's just how I feel. Yeah. But
now, it didn't stop there. I don't know if he was on a press run. I mean, not if he was on a press run, because he was on a press run because his album came out that year. But clearly, that verse by Kendrick Lamar shook up the game. You know, rappers who responded to him, whether it was through music, whether it was through tweets, whether it was through posts, whatever the case may be, that also the media was egging on all this is going on. And it wasn't specifically like egging on between him or Drake. It was egging on between him and the entire rap game because he put the entire rap game on notice. And so you get that interview from Drake where he's talking down upon him. And then he also goes on another interview with Angie Martinez.
After Kendrick's thing, you wouldn't. I noticed you didn't really get into that too much. So
I just like, I don't know. It just wasn't real to me. It's like, I saw him after that, and it was just like love. So it's like, was that real or was that just like for the people? You know what I mean?
I think it's a sparring kind of sport.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, you know, then let it be real. Then, you know, I mean, because those were harsh words, right? So it's like, you can't just say that and then see me and be like, yeah, man, what's up? Pretending like nothing ever happened. Like, that's not real. To me, that's not like the nature of battling. I mean, there's passion behind it. There's anger behind it, you know, and I personally enjoy making like great music and bodies of work over like being the talk of Twitter for like 5 days, you know.
But you see
now, following that interview with Angie Martinez, it's when it seems that things began to take off. Because I think that Kendrick is catching wind that like, this person is my peer, even though he signed 3 years before me and he got on before me in terms of a major label standpoint, he's still my peer. I still think that I am the best in this rap class. We are the same age. Although I don't have the stardom that he has, I still look at him as my peer. While Drake, on the other hand, was saying, no, I've been on since X amount of years. You literally just signed your first major label deal last year. Pipe down. I took you on your first tour. Pipe down. That's where he made that mistake, because now you're punching down on somebody who is very capable of rapping at a high capacity. And so now those gears are starting to click. And now Kendrick is, by my guess, I can't speak for Kendrick obviously, but from my guess, Kendrick could probably feel slighted by that, because this is supposed to be a competition. What I said in that verse, I stand by that, but now you're talking down upon me. So all that happens. the Angie Martinez interview happened, the BET cipher happened, and then we just get 10 years of back and forth. October 2023, Drake released Control. I say Control. For All the Dogs. For All the Dogs features first-person shooter, as I just mentioned, with J. Cole. Now, on this song, following the rumor of Kendrick Lamar declining to be on the song, J. Cole seems like he's playing a peacemaker in the sense. Like, I'm guessing there was tension there, and like, okay, we wanted the song to be the three of us. He turned it down, and Drake just probably like, F him, let's go on, just me and you, we'll kill him. And from my sense, from being a J. Cole fan to see the things that happen and even transpire between J. Cole and Kendrick, J. Cole's a genuine guy. Shout out to my other St. John's alumni. Shout out to all my St. John's alumni. But it seems like J. Cole is a genuine guy. And so on that song, it sounds like he's playing as peacemaker. Like, I believe I'm the best, and I believe if we're talking about top three, is me, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar. We are the three that they mention when they ask for the best. And that's essentially what J. Cole said in the song. Drake is doubling down on, nah, it's just me and you. He has that verse where he says, who the best? Go say it. No, he said, who's the GOAT? Go say, who's the GOAT? Who you really rooting for? Terrible bar, but he said, like, a kid that act bad from January to December is just you and Cole. Essentially saying, at the top, it's just me and Cole. It's not me, Cole, and Kendrick. While on that same song, Cole is saying it's me, Kendrick, and Drake. Drake is saying, no, nigga, it's just me and you. And that's where we get to where we are now. So that happens in October. October, November, December, January, February, March. 4 to 5 months later, because I don't know exact date that We Don't Trust You album dropped. Actually, it dropped March 22nd. It dropped March 22nd. Okay, so this is bringing me to a segue into my next topic, where Drake just seemed like he was afraid to step out. So March 22nd, for a lot of people, March 21st, because obviously the album drops at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, 12 a.m. on the East Coast. There's this hidden feature on this Metro Boomin and Future album. There's a song called Like That, and there's a verse from Kendrick Lamar. In that verse, Kendrick Lamar says, I'm putting a name on my bullet, and I got 2 bullets. One of those bullets is for Aubrey Graham, and the other bullet is for Jermaine Cole. But my main target is Aubrey Graham. But I got to get Jermaine Cole out of the way, because you are standing next to somebody who has been trying to belittle me for the past decade. So I'm going to get you out of the way, give you your bullet, and I got a whole clip for that person next to you. Kendrick then goes on to say, the media has been telling the world that it's a big three, meaning it's me, Drake, and J. Cole at the top of the rap game. But I don't believe that. I believe that the output and everything that I've done in this past 10 years, I'm better than both of y'all. So it's not no big three. It's me 3 times. Y'all get out the way. Y'all can fight over who's number 2. Y'all can fight over who's number 3. But in terms of the top spot, there's a large deficit in between 1 and 2. So it ain't no big three. It's just big me. I'm above the both of y'all. Also in that verse, Kendrick calls out the song First Person Shooter. He says, fuck sneak this and first person shooter. I hope they came with 3 switches. So he calls out the song that made him step out there. He called out the song that said, all right, 10 years is enough. It's time to finally go at it. So he calls out First Person Shooter, and then he ends that same verse with calling out the album in which that song was featured on. Where he says, for all your dogs go to heaven, that's okay with all these knives. Wait, did I say that right? For all your dogs go to heaven, that's okay with all these knives. You go see Pet Cemetery. Yeah. So he calls out both of them. He calls out the song that they were featured on, in which the disrespect continued on from Drake. He also called the album that was featured on. So Kendrick is saying, no more of the sneak dissing. We are here now. Which brings me to my second point. So my first point was Drake just never looked at Kendrick as a worthy opponent, and that was the biggest mistake because Kendrick, obviously we see now in hindsight, is a worthy opponent, but anybody who's a fan of rap, who's a fan of Kendrick Lamar, who's a fan of both artists, know that Kendrick is a worthy opponent. Kendrick can rap and have been rapping for a good, almost 20 years. And so for Drake to try to belittle him because of his commercial success and not actually because of his ability to rap, that was a mistake because you're not actually sizing up your opponent correctly. You're looking down on your opponent, you're talking down on your opponent, and because you're talking down, you think that you can play to like we say in basketball, you play to your competitor's level. You play a weak team on Wednesday, you might, if you're the top team in the league, you might just lose that Wednesday game because you're coming in with the mind state of, we got to play these weak dudes. I don't really want to give my best effort because on Friday, we got to play the third best team in the league. So I'm going to play down to my opponent's level. And a lot of times when you do that, you get upset. Seeing it happen plenty of times. It didn't happen in my own life. I'm pretty sure if you're a hooper or a football player, whatever the case it may be, it's happened in your life. It happens a lot when you play down to your opponent's level. They surprise you and they kick your butt. And so that's what happened here, which Kendrick's actual level wasn't down. It was right here. And that was a mistake that Drake made. He tried to play down to someone's level who was actually down there. So you have Kendrick operating up here and Drake is operating down here. The outcome of this back and forth is no mistake. Like I said, that leads me to my second mistake that Drake made. It just seemed like, I don't know if it's because he thought that Kendrick wasn't a worthy opponent or what, but it seemed like he was afraid to step out there. It seemed like, and the reason why I bring up Kendrick not being a worthy opponent, because if you don't think somebody's a worthy opponent, you can kind of like let them play off to the side. Like, it's like giving your little brother the PlayStation 2 controller and unplugging the controller. Like, yeah, sit on this bed next to me. We playing NBA Live, and you think you beating me, but in actuality, I'm playing a computer. So you think whatever you want to think, and I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing, and you have all the fun in the world. And so I think that's what Drake's mindset was. It was just like, if I ignore it, if I let it go, don't have to worry about it. And from him doing that and him approaching it that way, it seemed like he may have been afraid to step out there. And that was his second mistake. For someone who was this big of a megastar, having this persona or having this thing on him to make it seem like you are scared to step to somebody who everybody's calling a boogeyman. So we have Like That releases on March 22nd. Drake takes nearly a month to respond to Like That. J. Cole got out there a week after Like That release, or 2 weeks. I think it was a week, actually. Yeah, it was a week after Like That release because he had that festival the week after. So, yeah, a week after Like That release, J. Cole got out there, responded to Kendrick. Everybody is saying, where's Drake at? Where's Drake at? Drake, are you going to respond? Drake, are you going to respond? And Drake was just dead silent. Then we get him popping out at Nicki Minaj's concert, and he's saying that, okay, I'm done playing. I'm going to go do what y'all are calling me to do. So Like That releases March 22nd. Drake puts out a song April 13th, but not officially. So from March 22nd to April 13th, there's 22 days. It took Drake 22 days to respond to Kendrick Lamar. That's nearly a month. So it just seemed like you were taking far too long for somebody who you look down upon. Because we live in a day and age, especially in social media and in the digital era, we want everything like that. If Kendrick releases a song on March 22nd at 3:30 p.m., Drake, you want a response at 9:30. And so that's when we go back to that mind in the public perception. Like, that's just where we are, unfortunately, in today's day and age, is that everybody is glued to their phone, so they want everything instantly, which I don't fault Drake for not responding instantly, because that could have been a grave mistake in doing so. But 22 days is a very long time to respond to a diss record. And then that 22 days is not even official 22 days, because the day that Drake released, it was a Saturday. And because Drake had been so silent for 3 weeks, nobody even actually believed that it was Drake, because the way it was released, I believe it was either on Twitter or YouTube, and then DJ Academics went on his live and playing a song, and nobody believed that it was an actual Drake song, because in between those 3 weeks when Drake wasn't responding, people were making AI songs. They were making AI Kendrick songs, AI Drake songs. And so as the more AI songs began to release, people started to question everything that released. So when Drake first responded with the song Push-Ups on 413, he didn't release it officially. It was just like some internet file. Again, I don't know if it was Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, but it was out there. It didn't officially release. He didn't post it. Nobody in his team posted it. It didn't go to DSPs. It was no official release for the song. The song just popped up on the internet. And then we heard DJ Academic, who was close to Drake, playing it on his stream, and people still didn't believe it. So this is going back into like, why are you afraid to step out? Like, if you're going to do something, say it with your chest. Like, if you're going to respond to him, just do it. Don't play these games. So we got to figure out, is this Drake or is this AI? Is this official release, or people just playing around? Because then that ties into that, like, what are you actually afraid of? Like, what's going on with you that you can't respond to this man that's calling himself the boogeyman? So we have 2020 days, 2020. We have 22 days. Song comes out. Can't figure out if it's Drake or if it's AI. Academics then on his stream is getting text messages from Drake, and he's reading them out loud. And Drake then delivers another song where he tells Academics that, hey, don't use that version, use his version, which was an updated version of the song that quote unquote leaked a couple minutes earlier. And it was a completely different beat, but it was the same song. And so now we have an official release, because Academic is saying that Drake is putting it out there, that Drake has put it out there, Drake has texted him, and he's playing the official song on his stream. So that is the quote unquote official release, was Drake texting the song to Academics while he was on the stream and telling him to play that, which was the updated version. Okay, so we got 2 different versions of one song that we don't know is actually real. That looks like and sounds like somebody who's afraid to step out there. Because why aren't you saying it with your chest? Say it with your chest. Then we get those songs. It's officially out there. Even though Academics was telling people that Drake was texting him, and even though everybody know that Academics has close ties with Drake, people still didn't believe that it was a real song. And so that further ties into, like, what are you afraid of? That leads into Drake playing these internet games, which is the next mistake that he made, and I'm going to speak on that in a little while. But on that stream, following that, he's texting Academics throughout the stream. And there was another text message that Drake sent Academics. And that text message, actually, this is what the text message read.
He said, Act, you know I was trying to come off tour and relax. Niggas done fucked up my whole feng shui. Is that how you spell feng shui? Okay. He said, now I gotta eat until this debate is done. You know what that means? He's locked in the studio. 10 songs a day. Barring up everybody. Ross, you gonna get it too, nigga.
So he's telling everybody essentially what he's about to do, while we still don't know that it's even a real song. So that's the biggest problem. So the first mistake was he didn't look at Kendrick as a worthy opponent. The second mistake was he just seemed afraid to step out there. For somebody who was claiming to be number one, somebody who's claiming his opponent is not worthy, he just seemed afraid to step out there and go toe-to-toe with him. So that's the second mistake. The third mistake was the internet antics. So following the release of that song, which it didn't get an official release until a week later. So it released on April 13th. No one knew if it was real or not. No one knew if it was AI or Drake. We just assumed that, hey, it's been out there for so long. Drake never said it wasn't AI. Drake never said it was AI. So we're just going to assume that it's an actual release. Great. A lot of people didn't take too kindly of that because we wanted to hear, like I said, him poke his chest out. And so in between that back and forth, DJ Head, who was a famed West Coast DJ and someone who's very close with Kendrick Lamar, TDE, and PG Lane, he got out there and said that, where's the official release at? Like, I don't see the song on no streaming platforms. We still don't know if this AI or not. It seems like he's scared to jump out there. Drake responds with, they have nothing, use me as they had nothing to drop. But so this was a third mistake because Drake just playing internet antics. Now, again, for somebody who is as big as Drake, has a huge social media following, has a huge world internationally following just in terms of music, if you're going to use the internet, use it to your advantage. Don't use it to play around. In comparison to the two artists, I feel like Drake did a lot of playing while Kendrick did a lot of studying. I made a mistake in saying that I didn't even think that Kendrick Lamar was active on social media. I remember a year or 2 years ago, PG Lane had announced this dummy phone, which was essentially a product of theirs they were releasing that didn't have any internet connection, didn't have any social apps, didn't have any apps in general. It was just a phone, call, text, emergency calls, whatever the case may be, and that was it. It didn't offer anything else. So when you are releasing something like that, especially when you considering that Kendrick is somebody who is very private, we don't hear much from him, we don't see much from him, I just assumed that Kendrick just be off the grid all the time. However, we have learned, you can go back and listen to some of my video breakdowns, some of the things that I felt like Kendrick Lamar picked up on the internet. He paid a lot of attention to things that were going on the internet. He watched, he dug, he pried, whatever the case may be. Kendrick found out things that I just never assumed that someone like him was, who appears to be off the grid, could find out. So while Kendrick, who was opponent, is studying his opponent on the internet, his opponent is using the internet to play around. So he has that use me as they have nothing to drop button, which is essentially Drake's gravest mistake because, boy, Kendrick had a lot to drop. Unfortunately, he had a lot to drop, and he puts you in that turtle shell, and we have not heard from you for some time now. So that was one of the things that he did. Another thing he did was posts he was making. He was essentially likening himself to Kill Bill, posted a Photoshop picture of him in that scene where, and I haven't seen, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of movies, seen a lot of classic movies, especially black movies. Unfortunately, I have not seen Kill Bill. So as I'm speaking towards his scene, I can't vividly depict it, but I've seen enough scenes of Kill Bill to know what it is. That's neither here nor there, but the reason why I bring that up is because Drake posted a picture of him photoshopped as Uma Thurman, or in Uma Thurman's position to where she's surrounded, I think, like in a dojo by people with a bunch of weapons, essentially saying like that's who he was, because obviously he took on this persona as Drano's, Drake version of Thanos, because he was going at so many ops, which was another mistake he made, but we're not really going to dive into that. But he posted himself as a Photoshop in that. So still like playing around. Another grave mistake he made, which is I spoke about in the 616 in LA video breakdown, was playing around with innocent people. Posting pictures of Kendrick Lamar's manager who has nothing to do with this back and forth. That was a grave mistake. He also made mistakes in terms of the internet by reading into things that I'm not going to speak about right now, but in terms of Kendrick Lamar's wife. That was a totally grave mistake he made in terms of playing with the internet and then believing things that are going on the internet. And in terms of believing things that are going on the internet, as we heard in the, as Elliot Wilson called, the official name is Part 6. Elliot Wilson called it, "You Broke My Heart," instead of "The Heart." But as he discussed in that song, and I believe he probably discussed in the Family Matters too, is that there was this internet theory going around that Kendrick released Meet the Grams because Drake planted a mole in his camp and fed him fake information. Obviously, we've learned that not to be true, because the 616 in LA cover, as well as the Meet the Grams cover, featured some of Drake's personal belongings. And the internet rumor was that was fed to Kendrick by Drake. Drake saw this taking off and saw this gaining traction and decided, I'm going to run with that, and I'm going to add more fire to that. Even though it's not true, I'm going to add more fire to that. The reason why I say that's not true, because we have learned that Drake actually didn't feed Kendrick that information. This person, who was a worker at this hotel that Drake visited, fed Kendrick all this information and Drake's personal items. So that ties back into Drake just doing too much and believing and playing on the internet just way entirely too much. When you're in a battle and a back and forth like this is not a time to play around, but for whatever reason, Drake thought this was the time to play around. He even further went on posting selfies and posting things in regards to the song Meet the Grams, where Kendrick spoke about him having another child that he's hiding. And then Drake is responding to that. Instead of responding to it with music, Drake is responding to it with selfies. So it's just like, he spent way too much time on the internet playing around while his opponent didn't say anything. That is the most important part for all of, I know we're speaking about Drake here, but that's the most important part for all of y'all to know about when we're speaking about this. Through this entire back and forth, Kendrick never said one entire word. The first time we got a personal word, not music, was during his concert that happened on Juneteenth. So the Like That verse came out March 22nd. We started to get releases from Kendrick starting in April and it led all the way through May, through the end of May. Through that entire time frame, we never heard one word from Kendrick. Didn't see him at concerts, on our rants. Didn't see him posting on social media. Didn't see no one speaking for him. He was just dubbed off releasing music. While Drake, on the other hand, was using social media to play around, to be childish. You know, I can't go into Drake's mind and figure out, you know, while you were in this heated back and forth, what made you turn to the internet to use this as like a source or an outlet to play around while someone else was clearly out for blood. If I had time to speak with that person, I would ask him, because I think that's something that we need to know. Like, you spent so much time playing around that you didn't really notice what was going on, and in the end, you got your ass beat. And so that was my first 3 mistakes that Drake made. First one was not looking at Kendrick as a worthy opponent. Second one was afraid to step out. Third one was the internet antics. The fourth one was wasted bars. Kendrick didn't waste any bars in the 5 songs he released. If we count Like That, Kendrick released 5 songs. So we have Like That, Euphoria, 616 in LA, Meet the Grams, and Not Like Us. Those are 5 songs, and we don't have any wasted bars. The closest thing to a wasted bar will be the A minor bar in the end of the first verse for Not Like Us. But that's not a wasted bar, because he used that to play on Drake's PDF, in the PDF file, but also he flipped something that Drake did in one of his diss songs, which was Family Matters. Drake wasted so many bars in this back and forth that it didn't make sense to me, but this ties into Drake not seeing Kendrick as a worthy opponent. So obviously, you've all heard Family Matters at this point. One of those first bars was the day free. He spent so much time on, you know, mentioning Kendrick's wife and his manager, his business partner, and saying day free. You know, one of the kids might be day free. He stretched it out for 2 or 3 seconds. In between that time where he's stretching out day free name, we could have gotten bars that were directed at Kendrick Lamar, but unfortunately we did not get it. He even then goes on with the, you know, shake that for Drake, shake that for me, but not for free. Not my nigga. I know I'm butchering that. I'm meant to do that so I can condense it. But not my nigga Day. Like you already wasted a bar extending this man's last name. Now you're even wasting a bar doubling down on something that's not even true. Like you're trying to drive this point home. If you want to drive this point home, give us a poignant bar. Give us the reason why you believe that Dave Free is baby mama, and then go on to continue to address why his camp or his circle, is not true. But instead he said, Dave Free, shake that for Drake, shake that ass for, shake that for my nigga Dave. But not that, like, he wasted so many bars in that one part of the song that it was just like, okay, you're playing around. Like, this is going back into just not seeing Kendrick. I guess the underlying theme of this back and forth is he didn't see Kendrick as a worthy opponent, and that came back to bite him in his ass. So that was a couple of the bars, and that was so early in the song. The song then goes on to where he started addressing other people, which was, like I said earlier, another mistake he made because, yes, a lot of people have issues with you. A lot of people are featured on Metro Boomin and Future's album. However, none of them is actively getting out there. We have Rick Ross release the song. Fine, you can ignore Rick Ross. Rick Ross doesn't have that big of a fan base. We know that, a lot of second half of Rick Ross's career, the resurgence comes from, being close to Drake in terms of commercial success. However, yes, you have all these people who you are going back and forth with, but you don't have to address them. You need to focus on the person that's in front of you because they're throwing shots and they're in the shadows, or they're throwing shots and they're standing behind somebody. And the person they're standing behind is right in front of you. His name happened to be Kendrick Duckworth. And so him addressing other people also was a mistake because why were you so blind or oblivious to the target that was right in front of you? Because the target that was right in front of you was throwing darts and they're hitting. And so that mistake even led into the next wasted bar, which was a weekend. Like that part of the song of Family Matter where it says, some on the weekend was like, I'm sorry, we just promote. We didn't need that. I'm gonna be completely honest. We did not need that. That second verse in Family Matters, as well as that third verse in Family Matters, are very good. However, that second verse is not as good as the third verse because of the antics going on. Like, first of all, I'm already mad that you are addressing other people, but how you're addressing these people, okay, you're kind of getting at them. So you're taking your eyes off the target because you shouldn't be worried about them, but at least you're doing it in a tasteful way, one that I could digest as a fan of rap. But then the moment I'm starting to give you your props, here you go wasting another bar. So you have two verses, and in those first two verses, you've already wasted bars. You have the Dave Free, where you gave 10 seconds of a song just by extending his name and mentioning his name, which was someone that you shouldn't even had to have mentioned. And then you have one where you mention in the weekend, and then you waste another bar with that, like, we didn't need that. Even listening back to that song, as good as that song is, that part makes me cringe because, like, what was the purpose of it? Why are you wasting your time playing around when you have somebody right in front of you who's trying to take your head off? Fuck all those other people, fuck all those other rappers that, you're trying to address. Shoot at him. And even with him shooting at Kendrick, he made the biggest mistakes there. So, give you all a rundown, because this is going into my last mistake. He didn't look at Kendrick as a worthy opponent. He seemed afraid to even step out there and address Kendrick. He started playing internet antics, not taking this serious. He was wasting bars in the middle of a heated back and forth. And in the middle of wasting bars, it just seemed like he was culturally just unaware, just very just out of touch for someone who is mixed, for someone who culturism has been put in the forefront in this back and forth. He showed us why Kendrick was talking about what he was talking about in his back and forth because he was playing out every single thing that he shouldn't have played out. The first and the biggest mistake. Drake, unfortunately, has this affinity of addressing or mentioning other men's wives. I tag this as him being culturally unaware because if you come from the hood, you come from the culture, you know two things for certain. Women and children are off limits, no matter what. And the minute you begin to address or affect women and children, men tend to see red. We are men. We have egos. We have a lot of testosterone. We take on these personas of being providers for our families. And so the minute that you are threatening the people that I feel like I'm here to protect, I'm going to see red. And Drake has made this mistake time and time again. The first back and forth for him and Meek Mill. Granted, he came out on top in that back and forth, but he made that mistake there. You know, famous bar is it a world tour or is a girl tour? And he had other bars addressing Nicki in that back and forth as well. But, you know, at the time, Meek Mill was dating Nicki Minaj, who was Drake's label mate. And him mentioning her not only, you know, probably making Meek Mill feel some type of way, but it caused a strain between the two of them who were once close friends. Granted, Meek Mill, unfortunately, was not ready to step up to the plate to battle Drake. But had it had been a worthy opponent, that would have been a grave mistake. And we learned that later on because he did the same thing with Pusha T. He said Pusha T's name, he said Pusha T wife's name, somebody who was, you know, I wouldn't give him a pass for Nicki Minaj, but at least with Nicki Minaj, he's mentioned somebody who he has a standing relationship with, somebody the entire world knows, somebody who was not private, somebody who was a megastar herself. You go to Pusha T, whose wife is essentially a civilian. She's not, their relationship is not public. She is not a public figure. She is out of the light. And you're mentioning her name in the song saying, I'm gonna let her ring on you like Virginia Williams. Pusha T saw red. Because of him mentioning Pusha T's wife, Pusha T then went on to expose to the world that, hey, this nigga got a son that he's hiding from the world, and he's only gonna announce that he has a son by pairing him through an Adidas campaign. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna step on that Adidas campaign and I'm gonna force him to be a child. And this is not, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but this is not like wrong. This is what was put out there. Same thing even within that song that Pusha T released, him inspired his child. He's also taking stabs at the people around Drake, you know, that 40 tick 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 bar. He saw red. Once you mention my wife, things are off limits. I'm going to bring your child to the forefront. I'm going to bring to the forefront that you have birthed a child with someone who is rumored to be a porn star, and you have a friend who may be on his way out. There is no, at first there's going to be a lyrical miracle back and forth, but you took it there, so I'm going to go there. We would think that from there, Drake learned his lesson, because Drake then went on to cry about Pusha T doing that and how that made him feel, and Pusha T stooping too low, and Drake and Jay Prince went on a full media run talking about how Pusha T stooped too low, as if Drake did not just mention his man's wife by name. So you would think, coming off of the Pusha T loss, which I guess you wouldn't think that because you don't think that he lost to Pusha T, because Pusha T, again, is not that big of a commercial artist. So while some of us feel and know that Pusha T beat Drake and came out the victor in that battle, the rest of the world don't know Pusha T, don't care for Pusha T, and are fans of Drake. And so he still has no chink in his armor because they don't know who Pusha T is. And we're not going to consider that a loss. So I guess if the tables were flipped and he actually believed he lost, he would have learned from a mistake. But he didn't. He did not learn from a mistake because he followed up and did the same thing here with Kendrick Lamar and mentioned his wife's name. So the first song that Drake put out there was Push Ups. He has a bar where he says, I be with some bodyguards like Whitney. Now I'm going to be 100% honest here, y'all. I did not think of me knowing Kendrick Lamar, I knew his white name was Whitney. I did not think that that was a shot at his wife. And I'll even go as far as to say that I even put it out there that I call people, I don't remember if it was young or I call people stupid, but I remember going on an Instagram post where somebody was alluding to that. I was like, y'all too young to know what The Bodyguard is. Because if you know what The Bodyguard is, it's the film in which Whitney Houston was featured in. And so when Drake says, I'll be with some bodyguards like Whitney, I think that this is a play on the fact that he'd be with bodyguards and Whitney was in a song called Bodyguard. However, I later learned that there was a Reddit thread going on saying that Kendrick Lamar's wife was having an affair with his bodyguard. And that was a rumor that was going around. So this is even tying back into the internet antics and Drake just relying too much on things that aren't true. And so there was this rumor going around that she was stepping out on her marriage with his bodyguard. And so while I didn't think that that was a shot at his wife, after I learned about this rumor that was going around and the fact that it was gaining traction, I said, oh, this idiot saw what was online and he did that. And I only can confirm that because he did the same thing with the fact that people, made this rumor that, oh, Drake planted, a mole in Kendrick camp and they're believing all this information. And so because I saw that Drake lie about that and take that and try to put more fire behind that so it can gain more traction, I have no doubt that he saw that rumor and he decided to run with it. So that was one of the mistakes. The other mistake was the day free. So when that story didn't stick that Kendrick's bodyguard was having an affair with his wife, it didn't stick because Kendrick's wife is private, Kendrick's bodyguard is private. They are not public figures. If you know Kendrick, you probably know them. Or if you know TDE camp, you probably know them. But if you don't know them personally, you don't know them. And so that story didn't stick because people just didn't care. Nobody knows who Kendrick Lamar bodyguard is. Nobody really knows who Whitney is. So that can go on and we can ignore that. The next rumor was that Whitney was having an affair with his business partner and manager, Dave Free. And the rumor even further went on to say that she gave birth to one of his kids and Kendrick was playing stepdad to one of his kids. Again, not true, never been proven. However, Drake saw the story, this rumor, and gaining traction on the internet and said, okay, I'm going to dive into that. So when I tell y'all in the previous mistake that he was wasting bars, that was him wasting that bar, saying that, one of those kids may be Dave Free. It wasn't something that Drake did his research on and just decided, hey, I think that there's something there. It was literally just something that Drake saw on the internet and said, okay, I'm going to run with that. That's pretty funny. And then he extended that even further into, the reason why they're having marital problems is because of that. And it was just a bunch of other stuff that Drake went on to say. But that was a mistake because from Kendrick's point of view, and I don't know Kendrick and I can't speak for him personally, but I can speak as a man. Just don't mention my wife. Don't mention my wife. Don't mention my girlfriend. Don't mention my side piece. Don't mention any woman or children I care for or care about. Because I decided to become a public figure. I decided to put my life out there. That's not something that they chose to do. Yes, unfortunately, they are with somebody who is a public figure, but that's not what they do. That's not what they signed up for. So keep them out of the light. Keep them away from all of this because they have nothing to do with it. Aside from that, where I come from, where we come from, where people will look like we come from, we know you don't speak on another man's wife. We know you don't speak on another man's girlfriend. We know you don't speak on another man's mama. We know you don't speak on another man's children. They are essentially Casper the Friendly Ghost. You don't ever see them. It's me and you. You want to mention my homie. You want to mention my cousin. You want to mention my brother. That's fair game. You know why? Because I don't even have to handle any of those issues. They can handle their own issues. But if I feel the need to handle those issues, I will. However, it's not the same for innocent children and innocent women. So that goes to show that, Kendrick is telling us that there's a difference between them because there's a cultural disparity, and Drake is showing us that there's a cultural disparity. Because if Drake had been of the culture, he would have known the number one rule is you don't mention women and children. It's off limits. It's no exception to that. It's when you mention that, you got to deal with what comes after that. And Kendrick showed him what was coming to that. And Kendrick was warning him, hey, don't take it there. Don't take it there. And Drake just kept. And Kendrick said, okay, we're taking it there. Now I'll paint this picture of you being a PDF file because we have this video of you on stage as an adult man kissing a 17-year-old girl. We have this video of this 14-year-old, 13-year-old girl saying that she has a friendship with you in which you're giving her advice about girls. So now I can paint a picture to say, that looks kind of weird. And I think that looks kind of weird because those behaviors are very resembling of a PDF file. So that's Kendrick seeing red. Kendrick was like, oh, okay. I told you not to do it and you did it. Well, let's go. And that first instance was him releasing Meet the Grabs. Meet the Grabs is very cynical. Kendrick is the first verse. He's addressing Drake's child. They're Adonis. Then he goes on to address his parents. If Drake don't go that angle, I think we don't get Meet the Grabs. And so he kind of like got what he was asking for. And Kendrick told him, like, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. He went there, just culturally unaware. I don't think that Drake don't do that, we don't get Meet the Grabs. If Drake don't do that, we might not get Not Like Us, but I hope we do get Not Like Us. But for sure, I don't think we get Meet the Grabs. But he went there, unfortunately. Another thing that Drake did that told me he was culturally unaware was assuming that Kendrick didn't have street ties. Drake assumed that because Kendrick was from Compton and didn't claim an active gang, he didn't claim an active gang, that he did not have street ties, which is not true. I've explained this in the Instagram Live. I feel like I explained this in the Not Like Us video, music breakdown, and I want to explain this again here. In Compton, in cities like Compton, whether you are actively gang banging or not, you are affiliated with the gang, unfortunately. That is the unfortunate geography lottery within Compton. If you grow up or spend time in a certain section, you are affiliated with that gang whether you claim it or not. Which is why, the most famous skit in Good Kid, Mad City, where you stay, where your mama stay, where your grandma stay. Those are questions that happen within our city because it's important. A lot of times, now I can speak from friends and I can speak from my family. Majority of the time, people claim hoods where their grandma stay because majority of the time, when you are stepping off that porch, getting off the porch, hanging out in the neighborhood, it's at your grandma's house because you spend so much time at your grandma's house. And the story behind that, I want to give y'all a deep dive. But in LA and Compton and Watts and things like this, home ownership starts with our grandparents. Our grandparents came from the South for a better life in the 60s and 70s. And they were able to, not able to because they were, and that's another topic. Y'all can go back to Speak My Peace podcast to listen to that. But because of redlining, they could only buy homes in certain neighborhoods, whether it was Inglewood, Long Beach, Watts, Compton, wherever the case may be, but they had home ownership. We don't see too much of that now because the homes cost so much, but back then the homes were very affordable. However, we were redlined to only purchase homes in certain places. And so, say your grandma bought a home in 1970s. Your grandma more than likely is still going to have that home, in the early 2000s when you're a child, when you're a teenager. And so, in a lot of black families, especially within LA, when your parents fall on hard times, where do you go? You go to your grandma's house until your parents can get on their feet. And so, when it comes to the point to where you have to go to your grandma's house and stay with your grandma's house, you are spending time in that neighborhood. And so, I'm just tying this back into that skit on Kendrick Lamar album, where your grandma stay, is because all right, you're trying to tell me you don't bang no hood, but where your grandma stay? Because wherever your grandma stay, those are probably the people you were hanging around. So that's the significance of that. Tying this back into Drake, he made a grave mistake in just assuming that because Kendrick don't actively claim a gang, that Kendrick wasn't affiliated with the gang. However, if you are from the city, if you're a fan of Kendrick Lamar, if you know anything about Kendrick Lamar, you know that Kendrick Lamar is affiliated with the gang, even if he don't claim a gang. You can go back into the Typical Butterfly album cover.
But he's bringing the hood with him wherever he goes.
How did the album art come to be?
I wanted to bring a light as far as wherever I go, that's where the city is going to. Whether I'm in the White House, whether I'm in Africa, I want them to see it just like me.
A bunch of gang members, not just black people, it's a bunch of gang members in front of the White House. You can go into some of the rollout for To Pimp a Butterfly. You know, Kendrick shooting an interview in somebody's backyard in the hood, surrounded by Bloods. That's a gang affiliation. You can go into some of the lingo that Kendrick speaks with. You can go to some of the people that Kendrick hangs around. You can go to the label that Kendrick is signed to. Like, what Drake don't understand is that in our areas and our neighborhoods is that a lot of times we are a product of our environments, and so we tend to we tend to gravitate to the people around us, the older people our peers, whatever the case may be. And if they're claiming the gang, you want to claim that gang too. However, in those same neighborhoods, they can respect and see when people have a greater meaning than just being a product of their environment. They can see when people are so special that they can grow out of that environment and become bigger than that environment. And those people, and the majority of times, are well respected. I've been listening to Kendrick for about 20 years. I think probably about 15, 16 years at this point. I can see Kendrick being that person in the neighborhood that people see, oh, he can rap. Let's keep him away. You know, the story of DeMar DeRozan and, you know, how he got the name Debo. Such a great basketball player that everybody in the hood knew, hey, don't mess with him and leave him alone. Because for one, he can handle himself. But two, that kid is going to go places. So just stay away from him. That's Debo. Leave him alone. And Drake, I guess, had this misconception that because Kendrick Lamar didn't have gang ties, because Kendrick Lamar wasn't riding around with a big red flag, that Kendrick wasn't that. But we know that Kendrick is that. Drake also believed that because he had relationships with people from the city that Kendrick Lamar is from, that he was more respected in those neighborhoods because he had been around people who are actual gangbangers. I just gave y'all an example of DeMar DeRozan. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan spent the first half of his career in Toronto playing for the Toronto Raptors, in which Drake is a brand ambassador for. DeMar DeRozan is from Compton. DeMar DeRozan is affiliated with a certain section in Compton. We know that Drake has or had a relationship with YG. YG is from Compton. YG is associated with a certain section of Compton. So when you have YG and Drake being frequent collaborators, you can say that, oh, they may be friends. There may be a relationship there. We know that Drake has a relationship with the gang. We know that they have had songs that they've been featured on of one another. Also, in one of those songs in which the gang shot a video for, Drake was in the middle of Compton. This and Kendrick, subliminally, ironically. But I say all that to say is that Drake made that grave mistake, like, oh, you don't claim a set, so you're a civilian. You don't claim a set, so you're, I'm not gonna say the word, I'm gonna say a cat. But you don't claim a set, so you're not really a real deal in your city. So through all those antics, Drake just showed us he wasn't culturally aware because he tried to paint this picture or tried to belittle somebody who was really from where he's from, somebody who was very culturally aware, somebody who was really grounded and rooted in this neighborhood. He tried to paint this picture as because you don't look like what the stereotypical black person look like in that neighborhood, you are not really a factor in your neighborhood, which couldn't be further from the truth. We obviously learned that one, he was wrong because the people he called out, which was YG and DeMar DeRozan, they made it known that, nah, I know we had a business relationship, but this nigga right here, not only is he from my city, that's my brother, so I'm going to stand behind him. I know the game is a weirdo, and, he claimed his alliance with Drake. I don't speak for me, I speak for entire country, and I tell y'all, we do not claim the game. The game has made major contributions to the city and major contributions to the world of hip-hop. However, in 2024, he has really separated himself to the point to where we, people from Compton, try our best to not associate ourselves with the game, because then y'all will believe that people from Compton operate like the game. So he called out DeMar DeRozan, called out YG. They, made it known they will stand, solid and being rooted at home. The game made his allegiance with Drake. He also called out Chris Brown, which was a grievous mistake, because everyone knows that Chris Brown is from Virginia. Yes, Chris Brown is from or claim a hood in Compton, but Chris Brown is not, like, you're trying to paint pictures of Kendrick Lamar not being a factor in his hood or a factor in his neighborhood or a factor in the city. This is not the person to compare to him, because when I speak about the culturally aware thing, we look at Chris Brown and we think extortion. We don't even hesitate to think that. Whether Chris Brown has been extorted, that's neither here nor there. That's for you to debate, for you to decide. I have my own beliefs. You can have your own beliefs. But when I'm speaking about people from the city, we don't look at Chris Brown as Chris Brown as a person from the city. So you mentioned 4 people. 1 is not actually from the city. 2 made sure that they were vocal or stood beside Kendrick, and 1 of them just happened to be a weirdo. So he was very culturally unaware in the sense of trying to paint Kendrick as his dweeb, because he doesn't look like what the stereotypical black man from Compton looks like, because he don't talk, not even talk, because he does talk like that, but because he is not out here pushing the line so openly like stereotypical black person from Compton and how the white media perceives us to be, he saw him as a square. And that was the gravest mistake, because we seen Kendrick align himself with those people. We seen the Kendrick Lamar pop out. Like, this is real people actually from the city standing behind this man, and you don't get that type of respect by having money. You get that type of respect by being a solid dude, also being somebody who is very present for the neighborhood. So that was another thing that Drake showed us he was culturally unaware. Another thing that Drake did and showed us he was culturally unaware, I said that the number 1 rule was you don't touch women and children. Another thing, if Drake was culturally unaware, is he would never release that tailor-made freestyle. We don't touch women and children. We don't speak ill or speak of or use the dead in vain. And Drake did that with the tailor-made freestyle.
Kendrick, we need ya. The West Coast savior.
He couldn't have made a bigger mistake than he did than having an AI Tupac verse. Tupac? Come on, Drake. We know that Tupac is an East Coast boy, but Tupac got a lot of love in LA and Compton specifically, and the Bay Area. So Tupac is like a treasure to the West Coast. So not only do you show you're not culturally aware because you are using the dead's likeness in vain, but out of all people, you choose Tupac, someone who was essentially like immortal on the West Coast, while battling against the person who is like the Tupac of the generation. I get the standpoint there and what you're trying to do, and like, oh, even your mentor, the person you look up to, is disappointed in you, but that's not how you go about that. And it was just distasteful. I seen a lot of people say, oh no, that song was hard. I get what Drake was doing there. And I didn't like that, because when Universal or Atlantic was rolling out that AI rapper a year or 2 ago in the pandemic, everybody was ups in arms. Oh, here they go, generating off on a black dollar or generating off of black people, you know, doing whatever they can to infiltrate the black culture. And then you have Drake, who does the same thing essentially, and people are saying it's creative. I personally didn't think it was creative. Again, I'm very culturally aware, and that could be the reason why, but I just thought it was distasteful. I get what he was trying to do, but it just did not make sense to feature Tupac likeness in the song where you're trying to diss Kendrick Lamar. The last thing I would speak about in terms of Drake being culturally unaware was a slaves reference. Drake culture has been put on the forefront and this is back and forth. And the fact that he's not fully black, the fact that he was raised by a Caucasian parent, or the parent that he was raised by was a Caucasian parent, the fact that it looks like he profits off the backs of black people, the fact that he really don't put himself out there in terms of aligning with black culture when we have social justice issues or certain things like that, all those things were brought to the forefront. So you already look weird in the light. And then Kendrick has Euphoria. We said, we don't want to hear you sing nigga, because when you say nigga, it kind of make me cringe because I look at you as a YT person. Drake doubles down, and the first words you hear in some of the first bars you hear in the next song that is released after Euphoria is Drake saying nigga. And in that same song, he's saying, why is Kendrick rapping like trying to get the slaves free? We saw how that mistake played out. You don't know how it played out? Listen to the last verse of Not Like Us. Kendrick flipped that so incredibly well that even I did not predict that he would do that. I thought he would just speak to it, but he flipped it. And he turned it to a verse, and he educated us on a poppy song. Not Like Us is a very poppy song, a song that we all dance to. And Kendrick is giving us a verse where he's educating us on culture vultures. He's educating us on colonizers, because you, the idiot being culturally unaware, is mentioning that I rap like I'm trying to get the slaves free. Yeah, my ancestors were once slaves. And so I speak to the plight of their descendants. I speak to this hope that we have in this country as black people, something that you don't fully understand. So Drake made a lot of culturally unaware mistakes in his back and forth and bringing up women and children. Thinking that because something appears a certain way, that it is that. And assuming that Kendrick doesn't have street ties because he's not actively claiming a gang. Using Tupac, an immortal legend on the West Coast, all of the West Coast, from as low as San Diego to as north as, I don't know what's the northern part of California. The northern part I haven't been is Chico, but I know Chico's not the north part. But all of the coast, Tupac is heralded as an immortal legend. And then you're rapping about slaves as a mixed race person who was raised by a Caucasian parent. Man, Drake. You could have won this battle. Not you could have, because I still would have been going for Kendrick. You should have won this battle. But you just made too many bonehead decisions. You didn't look at Kendrick, who is heralded as one of the best rappers of his generation. You didn't look at him as a worthy opponent. Despite the media telling you, this is one of the best rappers. We don't know who's 1, 2, or 3, but he's one of those 3. And for some reason, you didn't believe it. You showed us that you was really afraid to really get out there by taking so long to respond. And when you did respond, it wasn't an official response, to the point to where we had to question whether or not you actually responded. You play too much into internet games, posting on the internet, posting memes, posting Photoshop pictures, buying into rumors that you see in Reddit and Twitter threads. You wasted bars. You wasted bars in a back and forth in between you and a very worthy opponent. Somebody showed you they was not playing from the Like That verse and doubled down on the fact that they was not playing with the Euphoria song. And the biggest mistake is you just showed us that you were very culturally unaware. And the back and forth where your opponent is holding this mirror up to you and saying that you are portraying to be someone you're not. You are portraying to be of this culture, but you are really just a vulture. You're really just a colonizer, somebody who uses our culture for profit. I hope this is the end of that back and forth between them two, because if I was personally Drake, and I'm not, but the response from Not Like Us, from that single blowing up to the pop-up show to the music video doing numbers, that would piss me enough to get back in the ring. But I hope that that does not do that for Drake, because we don't want to see Kendrick beat a dead horse. So hopefully this ties the end of this back and forth, and this is the last video I had to speak about them two. But I told you I was gonna give y'all this video and details of the mistakes that he made, so I had to deliver on that. Hope y'all enjoy this. Hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned for more videos coming from the Speak My Peace podcast, as well as the Rhythm of Peace podcast. This is a place to find all things Speak My Peace TV related, and we are going to be coming with more content soon. I appreciate all y'all love support throughout these video breakdowns of back and forth. I know that I didn't go into specifically Drake, but as far as the Kendrick breakdowns, I appreciate all y'all support. I don't know what else to say. Again, hopefully this is the last of it, but if more comes from it, y'all gonna find me back here speaking about it. That's it. I'm out. Peace.